skill session, let me give you an outline for that, first of all, because what we are going to do, you are not aware about that, and why we have kept this workshop today. First of all, there are going to be 3 or 4 rounds in that. First, I will give you presentation, and basically to understand why listening has become an important skill. And core part of that I'm going to spend on attention level, attention span. And that is because the crisis that we are facing today, if we do not check it today, tomorrow it might be very late. The first part will be my presentation. Second, we will go over 3 tests. First test will be psychological test, your listening skill test. It will happen online. And it will measure how much listening skill capability do you have in the term of attention level. Third will be your video test. I will be showing you one video of around 15 minutes. I will show you twice. Okay? And then you need to come up with the summary of what you have heard. Or it might be the question answer round, whatever form you like at that time. And one more test will be of audio. Audio you will get of around 2 minutes, and you will get around 15 minutes for repeated listening. And after listening it for 15 minutes, then you will be given like fill in the blank sort of question answer which you need to fill up. Okay? And of course, during this activity you will have an icebreaker round where we will perform a lot of listening activities, basically to emphasize and to realize you that how listening can distort understanding. Okay? First of all, I am audible it clearly? Okay. Now, first of all, this is second, basically it's a part of your curriculum for PGDM student. After your first trimester, this listening skill session should be there. Now, when I heard this topic first, I thought that is it so important a topic that we can have a workshop over that? Can I talk about listening skill for 1.5 hours? Or is it so important for you to listen at all about the listening skill? Because listening is such a natural activity that you do it daily. You do it every moment. Even when I am speaking, you are doing that activity. So on first glance, it will seem that it's such a natural and obvious activity that there is no need for having seminar. Here is the listening you do at your classroom. You do listening when you will work in a company. You listen to your parents, you listen to your teachers, you listen when somebody, if you are offering an advice to somebody or you are getting a suggestion from somebody, listening is a pervasive activity. You will find it everywhere. But then I reflected again back, then I thought there is some major crisis that is happening in our society. And that crisis is basically related to listening, but of course it's also related to a learning part. Because listening is, of course, out of the 4 activities of learning, reading, writing, speaking, listening is one of the basic skills. Now you must have seen in many areas that you will find that spoken English classes are there. There are classes for improving your reading and writing, but there are no listening classes. Again, of course, I think for the obvious reason because there is no need for listening. But the trend that I am going to show in my presentation, if it goes on like this, we might need a listening class if we do not stop our behavior the way we are going. Okay? Now listening is everywhere, in the classroom, on internet, movies, gossip and corporation, consumer, as I told you. That's why this is famous phrase that you should listen twice as much as you talk. Because the God has given you 2 ears and 1 mouth. And basically this is such an obvious thing, but we do not keep it in mind and continue speaking, gossiping, chatting, and we hardly prefer doing listening. Okay? So why listening? Let's come to the crucial point why I am taking this lecture. When I opened up my class 7 years ago, Rudra Academy, for spoken English and personality development is still a buzzword. The most of people get impressed when you talk about that you are taking lecture on personality development. And there are occasionally seminars in even corporations, big business schools. Every time you will hear this word. I did not use this word in my posters or banners because I did not like it. There are various reasons for that. But one of the reasons was I discussed this idea with one of the top managers of Cisco. We were sitting together and we were thinking about whether could you really develop the personality of a student, and why this theme has arisen in the society in the last 20 years. Why we are talking today about the body language, why we are talking about today emotional intelligence, why we are talking here about how to speak to a person, how to listen him. We are conducting a presentation on seminars on personality development. 15 years back or 20 years back, when I was studying in a school or when I went to college, hardly there were any presentation on this topic. Now suddenly what has happened is, you can call it as a poverty of culture. Why call it poverty of culture? Because all this thing, this body language, let's take example of body language. It has become such a hot topic nowadays that you'll find so many hundreds of books published on it, there are seminars on that. But if our society cannot teach us while we are growing up that what should be our body language, then I think there is some problem with the society. If it cannot teach us how to speak in front of others, then there is some problem with the society. If it cannot teach us what is emotional intelligence, how should we deal with the children, how should you respect your elders, then I think again there is a problem with the society. And if we are living in that kind of society, it means it was not there 15 years back, it is here now. That every time, for even trivial matter, we have to attend presentation. Like in America it happens that if you have to learn cooking, you have to read a book, you need to go on websites, and then you learn cooking. Now, cooking is basically basic, essential part of any girl when it is growing up in a family. It is so natural that when girl learn about cooking, no one knows. And when society is teaching, suppose in another way, that you need to learn cooking from books, from seminars, from presentation, then you can compare it. What is happening? There are two kinds of society. So what my point is, there is a poverty of culture. We are losing something here, that the basic thing that we have learned from society, the basic thing that we have learned from family, we are not taking care of it, or we think that it's not important and it can be learned by presentation. For this, let's take example of American and Japanese management. Now in Japanese management, hierarchy is more important. Okay? Hierarchy is more important. And American, because of equality, democracy, and on all this liberalization concept, they do not believe in it so much. In Japanese management, you do not become leader when you're 25-year-old or 30-year-old. You go step by step in your organization. You move up the ladder by learning, by developing your skill, by obeying your managers, top managers, leaders, and that's where the listening plays an important role. When you know that you are going up in the hierarchy, you need to listen to your boss, and you cannot get promoted if you are not listening to him. So in Japanese culture, there was an innate concept in the society that listening plays far more important role than speaking. Because when you're talking about leadership, when you're talking about winners, when you're talking about suddenly a brilliant or prodigy, then you talk about speaking, because you judge people by their speaking. But in Japanese culture, they judge you by your listening. How can you sit patiently? How can you listen to your elders? How can you listen to your managers? Because without getting wisdom from them, you cannot become leader yourself. That is the concept of Japanese management. Even if you look at the Indian scenario, again, there is one interesting thing that I found when I was researching for this lecture. Indian society is called as assembly of listeners. Can you guess why? And particularly one community in India has been given this name, assembly of listeners. Any guess which community I am talking about? It's the Jain community. Even the book has been written on that they are assembly of listeners. Because their sadhu, sant, sage, whoever guru is, he sits and he gives preaching for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and the community of member of that community sits for that long. Now, of course, that was written for Jain community, but what I found is that it is pervasive in our society.